What up, friends? It's your girl T, the nappy-headed jojoba, and as you read from the title, I tried out the bootleg Curlformers, or as I like to call them, Curlfoamers. I put them in my head yesterday and decided to let them air dry overnight. That's more or less what I did the first time around with the real Curlformers. I wanted to create as much of an apples to apples comparison as possible, so I only tweaked a few things in how I actually installed them and let them dry and so forth. Now, in the comments on my first video on the Curlformers, I got quite a few people trying to give me advice on how to get better curls, and as I stated in the title as well as in the video itself, I wasn't interested in curls, I was interested in stretching my hair. But as you can see, the bootleg ones did indeed give me curls. I'm not particularly a fan of these sort of like Shirley Temple curls that Curlformers give. My only interest was in stretching my hair, and that was what I was going for again. And I think that the bootleg ones did a pretty good job, but they also, if you were looking for this result of curls, they did a better job of that on my hair, despite not even using a product with hold. In my first video, I used a moisturizer only. I didn't use any product with hold, and I did the same thing again this time because, again, I wasn't interested in curls, I was interested in stretch. And even despite that, I got curls anyway. And the first time around, I also sat under my hooded dryer for, I believe, an hour or so. This time around, I did not sit under my hooded dryer at all. I just put the bootleg Curlformers in my head and let them sit overnight, which was fucking unpleasant. As you can see in this clip here from this morning, I'm not super thrilled. I'm really tired. I had a pretty horrific night trying to sleep with those things in my head. But I just wanted to show you guys the results so we can compare, because now we have my results using moisturizer with Curlformers and using moisturizer with this. I did use a lighter moisturizer this time. I used this one by Shea Moisture from their Jamaican Black Castor Oil line. This moisturizer is pretty good in terms of slip. I do like to use it if I feel like I want an easier time kind of sectioning my hair off, but it's also a lot lighter than my Ride or Die moisturizer, which is the Chemet Biologics that I used in the last video with the Curlformers, the real Curlformers. I chose this moisturizer because I felt that perhaps even though I had let the Curlformers set dry overnight in my first video, they weren't really 100% dry. So I suspected that led to that sort of poofiness that I had, which I honestly don't mind. I don't mind poofy hair, but I also think that that detracted from my maximum potential stretch, if that makes any sense. So rather than chance it with such a heavy product, I went with a lighter moisturizer this time because I wanted to make sure that my hair fully dried, especially since I knew I wasn't going to be sitting under my dryer. And then I just topped it off with some of that delicious Vatika frosting that I mentioned in my Shit I'm Loving Right Now video. I've been using this Vatika oil off and on for years, and every time I go off and come back to it, I wonder why I stopped, because I really love the way it smells, and it's coconut oil, so obviously I'm going to be obsessed with it anyway. So that's kind of the basic setup. Let's talk about the pros and cons of real Curlformers versus bootleg Curlformers, at least on my hair texture. Everyone's head of hair is different, of course, so your mileage may vary, as they say. After the first set that I did with the real Curlformers, one of my besties in the YouTube comment section, Alley Catfire, recommended trying out the bootleg ones because I'd mentioned that I had a set of the bootleg Curlformers already, and I just hadn't tried them because I wanted to try the real thing first. And Alley Catfire was mentioning that on finger detangled hair, the bootleg ones work a little bit better because they're made of a stiffer material. Rather than using the ones I had, because I knew that those were the same length as these Curlformers, which is 22 inches, and if you remember from that video, several pieces of my hair were sticking out to the bottom because apparently my hair is a little bit too long for these. I've outgrown the length, and rather than investing in the super long length of Curlformers, I decided to just head on over to eBay and see if I could find a dupe. I kind of did. I did find a seller on eBay who was offering various lengths and widths of Curlformers up to 29 inches, but the 29-inch length was completely out of stock. Being impatient, I noticed that they also did have a 25-inch length, so I picked up 50 of them. These cost me about 34 bucks. And they came relatively quickly. They shipped from China, as they typically do with the bootleg Curlformers. I ordered them on March 21st, and they were delivered on April 4th, and I live in California, just so you have a little bit of a reference there, and the delivery was free. Now, unfortunately, I went back to check the seller that I purchased the bootleg ones from, and it seems like they're not selling any bootleg Curlformers right now. They don't have any listed in their store, and I searched eBay, and I'm actually having trouble finding anyone selling Curlformers in this length or longer, which is double unfortunate, not just for you guys, but for me, because after I installed the first one of these, I discovered that some of my hair is actually too long for even this 25-inch length. So clearly I don't know like what length is appropriate for my hair. What I ended up doing, I got the brilliant idea, you know, maybe 30 minutes to an hour after installing them all, that I would just take some of my satin rollers, roll those little tips on the ends of those as much as I could, and just kind of snap them onto the bottom of the curl former. So that's what you're seeing there in the video. While I did try to go for an apples to apples comparison as much as possible in terms of using similar products and a similar method of drying my hair whilst in the Curlformers and the bootleg Curlformers, I would definitely say I did not get an apples to apples result. I mean, this compared to what I got with the real Curlformers is more like apples and airplanes. They are completely different results. I'm not upset with this at all. I feel like I got a very good stretch with this, and my hair was completely dry, so I think definitely using a lighter moisturizer was a good way to go. And I think it is good to know that even without using a product with hold, if you were interested in getting curls using Curlformers, you might be able to without even having to use a gel or anything like that. So that was just something I thought would be worth mentioning because, you know, if you are like me and you're not a huge fan of gel, you might be able to still get curls if you wanted them without using any. Now let's talk about my actual experience with having the bootleg Curlformers in my head versus the regular. So this is a bootleg one and this is a regular one. Again, the bootleg ones I got in a longer length. These are 25 inches and this is the real Curlformer, which is 22 inches. They look almost the same, but I did hold two up together and stretch them out, and I could see that the real Curlformer is indeed a bit shorter. Hopefully you guys can see, but on the top is the bootleg Curlformer and on the bottom is the real one. I'm holding on to the very end of the real one here, and you know, it's completely stretched out, and then the bootleg one still has what looks like approximately 3 inches longer that's still curled up. So that should give you a pretty good idea of how they differ in length. The bootleg Curlformers are made of a stiffer material. I mean, even without looking closely at them, I can feel in my hands that this one, the bootleg one, feels a lot stiffer. So I feel like blindfolded, I would be able to figure out which one is which. Despite being a lot cheaper than the real Curlformers, I feel like these feel like they are still of quality to an extent. I feel like they are fairly durable. I feel like they would probably last a long time. And obviously they did a really good job of elongating my hair just like the real Curlformers did. Unlike the real Curlformers, I didn't have any issues with the openings on either end of these being sealed shut. If you guys recall from my previous videos, some of the Curlformers I had seemed to be sealed. Only on the orange ones, I think, or maybe only on the pink. I can't remember which color, but one of the colors, some of them, like, they weren't fully open. I actually had to take scissors to, like, cut some of them open, which was really stupid because if you're paying that much for something, it should be fine and ready to go right out the package. When I was installing the bootleg Curlformers, I did go ahead and use my real Curlformers hook that came in my Curlformer set, not the hook that came with the bootleg Curlformers. I've watched enough videos on YouTube of people warning me about the bullshittery of that hook that comes with the bootleg ones, and I said, no, I shan't fucks with that. As far as the installation process, I'd say that with the bootleg ones, it was the same or easier. Now, I would say it might have only seemed easier because I'd done it once before, so I was a little bit more experienced and I kind of didn't feel as afraid. With the Curlformers, I was working in pre-made sections because I had some parts from some loose twists that I had preserved, so I basically just took each section that used to be a loose twist and used that as a Curlformer section the first time. This time, my hair wasn't really in any sections. I think I was working off of 5 big twists. So I just went through each twist one by one and did more of a grab and go kind of situation in installing the bootleg Curlformers. And I found that it went quite well. It took me about 2 hours, which sounds long, but again, I only finger detangle. I do not use combs and I'm not interested in using combs. I'm used to having to be in my head for, you know, that long detangling or whatever, so it wasn't that big a deal to me. And in fact, it felt a lot faster than 2 hours. Now here are a couple cons about the bootleg Curlformers. The opening area. Now here's the regular Curlformer, and if I look at them, they look about the same, to be honest. Like if I hold this horizontally, it looks like the opening goes straight across and it looks about the same for this. But I would say that the rubber around the top of the real Curlformer is a lot more flexible and soft feeling, whereas with the bootleg Curlformer, just like the entire rest of the actual Curlformer, it's a lot stiffer than a real Curlformer. That stiffness led to a lot of tension and pain in my scalp. To be honest with you, I am tender-headed. Always have been, always will be. But the tension on my scalp was so intense that I actually had to go back and maybe 30 minutes to an hour after installing these, actually kind of loosen some of them and create some slack so that the opening wasn't flush against my scalp, because it was just pulling, and especially like in the front, nearly all the ones that I had to loosen were in the front, and it just felt like it was like snatching my edges out, which is really sad because my edges are already snatched out, so I don't need that happening. I also wanted to say that even though the opening appears to be cut at the same angle, it seemed a lot harder to move these bootleg ones around on my head just to try to position them so that I could get them out of my face, or so that I could lie down and go to bed, or tie a scarf over them at night. Like, just trying to move the bootleg ones around my head felt a lot more painful, in that it felt painful at all because I don't remember it being painful trying to move my Curlformers around. Only the bootleg ones hurt to move around. And the bootleg ones also felt kind of heavy on my head. I don't recall a feeling of heaviness with the real Curlformers once they were all installed. And granted, I did end up installing more of these. By the time I was done, I had 3 of the bootleg ones left, so I used 47 of the 50. But yeah, like, the pulling on the scalp, the heaviness, the difficulty moving them around made it kind of unpleasant to have these in my head, and I was very, very keen to snatch them out this morning. The last con was the actual removal process. I found that, again, the stiffness at the top of the bootleg Curlformers made it a lot more difficult to kind of squeeze them open so that you can slide your hair out, rather than actually opening. Typically when you squeeze it, it would just kind of do this. If you can see, it's just kind of bending to the side, which is actually kind of just tightening it around your hair rather than opening it. Whereas I don't remember having that issue with the real Curlformer. Whenever I would go to squeeze it to release it, it would go and open easily every time, and I was able to slide them down. I expressed my concern about the mechanical damage that can arise from using these types of rollers in your hair, which is why I'm going to stick to my plan of using them once a month or even less frequently. But I did find that I lost a lot more hair, it seemed like. Well, I didn't lose a lot of hair at all in removing these. I did notice a few strands seeming to come out removing the bootleg ones this morning, whereas with the Curlformers, I think I noticed maybe 1 or 2. I would say I had maybe 6 or more with this. Like you can see here, these are 3 of the bootleg ones that I just removed this morning, and you might be able to see just strands of hair that are still stuck inside of the sheath. And that ain't good, because that basically means that probably yanked it out of my head rather than it being just a shed hair. Like, I feel like those were pulled out of my head. I don't like that. Because they're so tightly clamped around your hair at the root, it would sometimes just kind of spin around and rotate on its own axis rather than actually letting me maneuver it and then squeeze it open to release it. So that was also just creating additional tension, where it was sort of like twisting the root of my hair instead of just letting me move the bootleg Curlformer around or squeeze it open to take it off. In any event, I am pretty pleased with the stretch it gave me. It even inspired me to do a length check video, which is such a throwback. Nobody does length check videos anymore, but if you want to see mine, you can check it out right here. So the real question is, would I recommend the bootleg Curlformers or the real ones? And I think that all depends on your goals. Like, it's hard to say. I mean, it depends on your budget, it depends on the results you want, it depends on how you plan to let your hair dry in them. I think I'm going to continue using both because obviously they give me completely different results. With the Curlformers, my hair was much more elongated and sort of hanging, whereas with this, it's given me those Shirley Temple curls that I don't love. Nonetheless, I think I'm mostly happy with my bootleg ones, and I may actually use them more because they're longer, so I won't have to worry about the ends of my hair sticking out the bottom as much. But I'll only be using them with the caveat that I give myself a little slack away from my scalp in areas where it creates too much tension, and I will not be trying to sleep in them ever again. I think my experiments are going to continue. My next one might be to try the real Curlformers again with a lighter moisturizer to see if I can kind of take the best aspects of both of these experiments and put them into one. You know, the comfort of the real Curlformers with the lighter moisturizer, meaning they'll dry properly, might be a good result for me. So we'll see about that. I think both products are good. I think there's just a lot more of a learning curve perhaps with the bootleg ones in terms of making sure you're not doing more harm than good with the scalp tension and pulling and things like that. But I think if you're careful and you sort of figure out how to optimize your use of them, it's probably a better deal because they're less expensive and you can get a solid result from them. The other caveat being, of course, using the real Curlformers hook and not the bootleg hook, because that's a piece of shit. Overall, I'm pretty happy with both sets of Curlformers, the real ones and the bootleg ones, and I look forward to experimenting with them more, just not too much. That's it. Those are all my thoughts, at least for now, on Curlformers versus bootleg Curlformers on my particular texture of hair. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, bye-bye.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm gonna tell you that now.